What's up, YouTube? How y'all doing? The following video is going to be a very interesting one, because while it's not directly in response to something that was said in another video, it is sort of me having to defend my stance in a manner against people who have criticized my way of thinking about a game and one of its rules. Now I'm going to explain this the best way I absolutely can, so just bear with me. In Velocityeleven's recent defense of this game, Final Fantasy XIII for the PlayStation 3 and Microsoft Xbox 360, one of the things he mentioned was the battle system. Unfortunately, I think I may have inadvertently jumped ahead of him and mentioned one thing I did not like about the game, which was that if the party leader died, which is, by the way, the only character you control in the game, then it was game over, and it was kind of a cheap way to get a game over. Especially considering you can typically have, everybody gang raping wanted that leader to get a cheap game over. Now, the defense, the counter argument is, well, even if you get a game over, you're allowed to retry from basically that spot. Okay, fine. But I'm going to explain this to you really quick, alright? I haven't seen many games where that rule actually is in effect. One of the few is on this disc. For those of us that have not played, it is the Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. And this disc has the Shining Force series. This is the game that I actually compare Final Fantasy XIII to when I say it has Shining Force syndrome. Why? Because Shining Force has the rule where if the party leader gets whacked, be it you or the enemies, fight over, end of story. The difference being, in Shining Force, you get sent back to the next chapel, or to the previous chapel you were at. Now, in Shining Force games, and even for that matter, in Phantasy Star games, also on this disc, you controlled every member of your party. In Final Fantasy XIII, you only control your party leader. Is this necessarily a bad thing? No, because it's actually it is a harken back to the old days. But in this game, in the NES version, the only person you did control was your party leader. Because there were certain, although in some chapters you did control everybody, but in Chapter 5, in the NES version, you only controlled the hero, or whoever the party leader was, and no one else. The only difference was, main difference is, if the party leader dies, we'll say it's the hero, okay, in this game. Unless it is a complete UC, meaning, let's say in Chapter 5 you have Doran. That's the dragon, okay? You are still able to use the rest of your party. And you're still able to, in a way, you're still able to issue some type of commands for them. Okay? In reality, in Final Fantasy XIII, in my opinion, it's almost like when you played Earthbound and you hit auto fight, because the game, in many respects, does choose 3 or 4 abilities or tactics for your main character to use. Sometimes I think they're completely backwards. as in not the ones you really want. And yes, you can. And yes, while you can use a manual way of doing it, it's completely something that just makes me go, ah! Now again, everything expressed in this video so far, and everything in this video is my opinion. You have every right to disagree with it, but I have every right to voice it. That's all I'm saying. Moving on. One thing I actually heard in, one thing I read was about it being a game being too easy if you could change your party or your party leader if the first one actually died. Let me think. Have I ever played games like that where if the original party leader dies, it moves over to someone else? Why, yes. Sorry, I don't have the original, but try the original some of the original Final Fantasy games. Now, last I checked, this is just me. We'll use the original Final Fantasy, although I'm pretty sure you can do it in these also. But this is Final Fantasy 3 and 4 respectively. This is just me. Last I checked, in Final Fantasy 1, if the original party leader that you had died, it switches over to the next party leader, and that person is the person shown on screen. It's not one of those, oh, party leader died, game over. Let's frustrate the hell out of people and give them a cheap game over. Okay? By the way, if anybody's wondering why the camera's actually pointed up like this, it's because I'm standing up, and unfortunately, yeah, if I had this camera pointing down, you'd only see my stomach. So it's no other reason than that. Okay? But, yeah. So people can tell me that, well, it would be too easy if you could switch out the party, if the party member could get switched out after one died. You really haven't played Final Fantasy, because if you had, you would be able to know any Final Fantasy, okay, from 1 to now, has that right. Yeah. Matter of fact, in 12, which is a game I'm not a really big fan of, you actually have the ability to, if your original party leader is getting your ass kicked, to switch over to the computer-controlled person and use them. What a novel concept. Considering in Final Fantasy XIII, they did take that out, and you're stuck using someone that might not be that great, i.e. Vanille or Hope, which can make fights drag on way longer than they need to. And if before anybody gets on me about leveling up my characters, oh, trust me, I do plenty of it. That's just my deal. Okay? I level grind probably more than most people when they play JRPGs, to the point where it's so absurd number because I power level like a mug. But that is my stance, and that is my defense of my stance. Whoops! Sorry. On Final Fantasy XIII's system. I do have other games to use, such as Trusty Bell, but I think I can actually pretty much sum it up using never try to sit in a chair, folks. Using these games and Dragon Quest IV. I'm not saying you're wrong, and I do respect your opinion. I respect everybody's opinion. But that's just the way I saw it from the way I've gamed my whole life. My whole life, which is about 20-some years. But anyway, later.